All right, well, I am from Texas, so howdy. It's good to be here with all of you. I've got so much I want to say. I'm not even sure where to start. So I think, I don't know, some of you have probably seen my film Unplanned or read my book. Well, so I'm not going to get into my entire story with you because most of you know it. I started working at Planned Parenthood when I was in college. I did not grow up in a pro-choice home. I grew up in a pro-life home. I grew up in a very conservative home. I grew up Southern Baptist. I grew up in South Louisiana and did not grow up around any abortion facility, really around anything that involved abortion. I remember my parents saying when I was a kid at some point in time, I remember them saying that we were against abortion. I remember them saying that, abortion was wrong, but my parents were not pro-life activists in any way, shape, or form, and so we didn't sit around the dinner table and talk about, what it was to be pro-life or pro-choice. It was a different time, right? So in the late 70s, early 80s, abortion was still considered very taboo. Anything involving sexuality was very taboo. People did not talk about homosexuality. They did not talk about abortion. They didn't talk about sex, right? So I remember in high school, going into high school, my friend's mom, there was a group of us at her house. My friend's mom said, I want to talk to you girls about something. I want to talk about sex. And we said, okay. And she said, girls, do you all know what a penis is? We said, yes. She said, good. Stay away from it. And that was the talk. And she said, okay, y'all can go back to what you were doing. And that was the talk. And so people didn't talk about sex. They didn't talk about anything like that. Everything was very, censored. And so people still had a filter, right? Not everything that came into the head came right out of the mouth. People did not talk about their politics like they do today. I remember going into the voting booth with my parents when I was a child, okay? And so I remember, some of you may have had the same sort of voting booth experience, but I remember going in and it was like literally a booth, right? And it had a curtain that went around you. And you would go in and you would pull this thing and the curtain would close around you. And then it had these little flip tabs and you would flip down whoever you wanted to vote for. And then at the end of it, to tally your vote, you would pull this thing that was kind of like a slot machine. You would pull it and it would go, and it would record all your tabs and the tabs would flip back up and then the curtain would open. And that was the best part. Right? It was like a magic show. The curtain would open, the tabs would flip up, and it would make a cool noise. So my parents would go in, and they would wait so that I could go in with each of them, right? And they would let me flip the tabs down, and they would let me pull the handle, right? Because that was the best part. And at the end of going in with my parents to vote, both of my parents would take me aside, and they would look at me and they would say, Abby, don't tell anyone who we voted for. As if there was any question who my conservative parents voted for every single election, right? But things were private back then. It was just a different time. No woman was standing up on a podium and shouting their abortion, right? No woman was wearing a t-shirt saying, I've had an abortion. People were not proud of their sin.
Yeah.
It was a different time. You kept your sins inside, on the inside. You didn't put them out for the world to see. We don't live in that world anymore. And so when I went to college, I didn't know anything about abortion. I didn't know anybody. There was nobody in my life that I knew of at that time that had had an unplanned pregnancy. I didn't know what abortion was. I also didn't know what a pregnancy center was. I didn't know either side. I think my parents had just thought, you know, I was an only child, so I think my parents just thought, you know what, we have taught Abby the biblical pathway to marriage, which is abstinence, and so, of course, she's going to do everything we have taught her to do. And so as long as she does that, then abortion is never going to be on the table. So why do we need to talk about something so disturbing to our little girl? And so we didn't talk about it. So when I went to college, I knew nothing about either side. So when I met a woman from Planned Parenthood who was on campus at my very conservative school, I went to Texas A&M, it was very conservative at that time. It was all very new to me. Now, the only reason I walked up to her booth was because everything was hot pink. And that's my favorite color. So I was like, oh, what's going on over here at this hot pink booth? She had all this hot pink, swag, and I wanted some. So that interested me. So when I walked up to her booth and she started talking to me about Planned Parenthood, it was all very new to me. And she started telling me about all these amazing things that Planned Parenthood does, all these services they provide, and they provide them for free, and they provide them to low-income women. And I mean, who doesn't want to help poor women? Everybody. Who doesn't want to provide health care to women who need it? Everybody. Right? Everybody wants help. Everybody wants to empower women. Right? And so all of that sounded good. She asked me what I thought about abortion. I told her that I was raised pro-life. She said, that's good. She said, pro-lifers are good people. They just don't understand the big picture. They're just kind of misguided. They don't understand that without access to legal abortion, women are going to be forced to go where? Back alley abortions, right? And if we have back alley abortions, if we don't have access to safe and legal abortion, women have to go to back alley abortions. Women are going to be just literally dying everywhere. All over the streets, every corner. Women just bleeding out, bleeding to death everywhere. Well, I just have an update. For almost a year, the state that I live in, Texas, abortion has been banned in the state of Texas. Yeah. No abortion facilities have been open in the state of Texas for almost a year. And I just want to make an alert, a news alert. No women dying on the street. Yeah. It hasn't happened, much to their chagrin. Women are doing fine. They're all fine. No one's dying on corners. The back alley abortion thing, it just doesn't hold water. But I didn't know this because I wasn't educated on it. And so I didn't know. And so the things that she was telling me, as someone who was very ignorant, as someone who was very naive to this situation, it just kind of made sense. Now listen, if I were to ask pro-life people, if I were to ask probably the majority of you in this audience, if I said, tell me the age where the majority of women are getting abortions, I would guess that the majority of people, the majority of pro-life people would say to me, whatever age you would throw out to me would probably end in teen. The majority of people would say probably 18 or 19. But that's not true. The age where most women get abortions in the United States are between the ages of 20 and 24. Where are the bulk of those young women? On college campuses. That is why Planned Parenthood and other abortion entities are so desperate to get on college campuses, right? Because that's where their demographic, that's where their population of women that they want to get into their facilities, that's where they're located, because they're located on college campuses. So that's why they're so hell-bent on getting on college campuses, because that's their target audience. Wherever there are vulnerable women, you will find Planned Parenthood there, right? They are a predatory organization. It is a predatory industry. They prey on the weak. They prey on the vulnerable. That's why 79% of Planned Parenthood abortion facilities are in what we call super minority neighborhoods, where at least 85% of the population are minorities. What also comes with those neighborhoods? Poverty. So what they say to these people in poverty is not, hey, let me help you get some job training. Hey, let me give you a scholarship so you can go back to school and you can get a better job. And you can provide for your family so you won't live in poverty the rest of your life. You won't live on the government dole the rest of your life. So you can get some real empowerment, right? They don't go into those communities and say, hey, you know what? We want to build up the family. We want to build up fatherhood. We want to advocate for marriage. We don't want you to be a single mom the rest of your life, because we know that single parenthood and poverty go hand in hand. They're not doing that. What they're doing is they're going into these neighborhoods, particularly minority neighborhoods, and they're looking at these women and they're saying, you're not strong enough to do this, you're not strong enough to be a parent, and you certainly don't have the skills to empower yourself, so the only thing that we can offer you is to kill your child. That's the only way that you can get ahead. Is to essentially be a murderer. Guys, that's not empowerment. But that's all they offer. So I didn't know all this. So I got involved really believing that I was going to help women. Believing that I was helping women. Now look, I got involved with Planned Parenthood in 2001. That was still the time when their forward-facing talking point to the media was that they were trying to keep abortion safe, legal, and rare. And everybody said that. That's what everybody said. Even the president said it, right? Everybody stood up there and said it. Bill Clinton said it. I mean, he wouldn't lie, so.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky.
So it had to be true, right? Everybody was saying. And that talking point resonated with a lot of strength. It made sense to people. Now, if you think about it logically, that talking point doesn't make sense. Because if something's good, why would you want it to be rare? Right? If something's good, don't you want it to be plentiful? Like if you like coffee, you don't want to be like, I love coffee, I really hope it's rare. No, you're like, I love coffee, I hope they have coffee everywhere, right? So if abortion is a good thing, why do you want it to be rare, right? Even that talking point doesn't make sense when you really think about it. But that was the talking point they were putting out. And it was illogical, but somehow it was making sense to people. And it was making so much sense, it was even drawing in sort of moderate Republicans. It was drawing in the independents. And so it was gaining a lot of traction. Safe, legal, rare, safe, legal, rare, that's what we were hearing. Then things changed. And I'll tell you when they changed. Things changed in about 2007. There was a big marketing change at Planned Parenthood. Now, let me tell you something. Planned Parenthood spends millions of dollars a year on their marketing campaign. Okay? Millions. They have focus groups, they have crisis media teams, they run focus groups on everything. They run focus groups on their color scheme that should be on their website. They run focus groups on the best font to use. They run focus groups on everything, right? So if you want to know the best way to draw in the demographic between 20 and 24-year-olds who are possibly abortion-minded, go to Planned Parenthood's website, copy it, and make it life-affirming.
Yeah.
Because they've already done the research for you. And I can tell you right now, it's not ever going to be light pink or light purple, and it's not ever going to have a butterfly on it. That's not what resonates with young people. But for some reason, that's what the pro-life movement always goes to. We think like 50 and 60-year-olds. Planned Parenthood thinks like 20-year-olds. And that's why they keep winning. Because they're actually thinking like their demographic, and they focus test it. So they focus test everything. In 2007, they had done this huge marketing campaign. And they came to us. We had a management meeting. At this point, I was already clinic director, and I'd gotten promoted. And they came to us, and they said, look, we're changing everything. And they said, you know, what they had found out was that this whole idea that, abortion, that it's just a fetus, it's just cells, it's just tissue, that wasn't working anymore. We knew that wasn't working anymore because, listen, 60% of women having abortions are already mothers. They already have children at home. So the idea that I'm looking at a woman who already has a 3-year-old and I'm telling her at 12 weeks into her pregnancy it's just tissue, that didn't make sense to her because she already had an ultrasound before with her 3-year-old, right? She knew it was a baby. And every single woman that walked into an abortion clinic, when she sat down across from me and she was talking about her pregnancy, she always called it a baby. No woman who was ever going to have an abortion ever called her pregnancy anything other than a baby. She never called it a fetus, she never called it cells, she never called it tissue. She always recognized that it was a baby, and we didn't. We were calling it something else. So that wasn't resonating with our customer, that wasn't resonating with the consumer, it wasn't resonating with our patient. And Planned Parenthood finally figured that out. And so they wanted to change everything. They wanted us to get on the same page as the clients that were walking in. So they did all this marketing. And they said, we're changing everything. We're changing our strategy, and we're changing our logo. They still had the nested P's and everything, you see the PP. They changed it up a little bit, they changed the colors. And they said, we're changing our motto on the bottom. That was when they went to Planned Parenthood Care, period, no matter what, right? They're still using that today. Care no matter what. Okay, that was new. And they said, we're changing how we're talking about abortion. We're no longer using tissue or fetus or massive cells or anything like that. And we're not going to answer any questions women may have about abortion. So when a woman comes into you, she asks you if you're, the baby has arms and legs. We're not answering questions like that. If she asks you about the risks of abortion, we're not answering questions about risks because we don't want to scare her. And if she asks about options, other than abortion, well, we're not giving her those because we don't want to confuse her. If she's here for an abortion, we're assuming she wants an abortion, that's what we're going to give her. So we're not going to confuse her with options. But we do have a specific talking point. And we want to teach you guys how to always pivot back to that talking point. And that's what we're going to do. So, here was the talking point. The talking point was, Abortion is something women choose because they care about themselves, their current families, and their future family. That was it. Abortion is something women choose because they care about themselves, their current family, and their future family. And I remember sitting there thinking, is that gonna work? Women want answers. They're asking us specific questions about the abortion. We're not going to be able to placate them with this talking point that doesn't answer their question. But I thought, well, I mean, they're the experts, so we'll give it a go. We go through this huge training. They teach us how to, pivot back. And Planned Parenthood is the best at pivoting back to their talking points and dodging questions. Right? You've seen that in the media. They're the best at crisis media. So they taught us all these skills. I go back into the clinic. It's an abortion day. I will never forget the first time that I used that talking point. I remember I was wearing maroon scrubs. And I was sitting in my office. I remember the patient's name. I would recognize her if I saw her in Walmart today. And I remember looking her in the face. And she was looking at me, she was concerned, she was a little tearful, she was upset, she was questioning whether this abortion was a good idea. And I looked at her and I thought, okay, here's the test, right? Is this really gonna work? I looked at her and I said, I know you're concerned. I know you're wondering if this is a good idea. I said, but you need to understand that, women choose abortion because they care about themselves, their current family, and their future family. And she looked at me, and she let out this big sigh, and she goes, you're right. That is why I'm having an abortion. Because I want what's best for this baby. And I know that now is not the right time for me to have this baby. And I sat there thinking, wow, it works. And just like that, we had turned abortion into an act of altruism. We had turned abortion into an act of compassion. We had turned murder into an act of compassion. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, I was the director of an abortion clinic, so at that time I thought it was genius. I thought it was brilliant. And I thought, oh my gosh, our media team is the best. They are the most brilliant people on the planet. I cannot believe they've done this. I cannot believe they pulled it off. And let me tell you something, it worked over and over and over again. And these women were so identifying with this talking point. They loved it. It was like pouring a salve on their conscience. They knew what they were doing was wrong. They knew it. They knew what they were doing was wrong, but then we were telling them that what they were doing was an act of altruism. You were doing it because you were killing your baby because you love them. And they agreed. You kill because you love. You murder because you love. You murder this child because you love your child at home. It really didn't make any sense, but it was working. And then that idea, right? This misguided compassion, it started to spread. We started to see it spread. The media, of course, picked it up, because the media loves Planned Parenthood. So the media started to pick it up, they started to spread. I still have 9 minutes on this thing right here, okay? So, it started to spread. So then we started to see it happening in the disability community. So these doctors were telling parents of children that were profoundly disabled. They were going to them and they were saying, you know what? The best thing that you could do, the most compassionate thing that you could do for your child would be to withhold food and water from your child and allow them to die. Have you ever seen someone starve to death? I have. To medically starve someone to death is the most cruel, inhumane thing. One of the most cruel, inhumane things that we do to people in this country. It is incredibly painful. And our hospitals are doing it to patients, particularly patients that are profoundly disabled. And it happens in this country. And they're doing it and calling it compassion. Now what do we see happening? Well, now they're coming for our elderly. Oh, you don't like your life? Oh, you're sad, you don't want to be old? Oh, it sucks to be old. It's fine. Go to this clinic and a doctor will kill you. It's fine. Physician-assisted suicide, euthanasia, it's coming. It's already here in some states. It's already all over the West Coast. Probably coming here soon. It's already in New Mexico. It's going down the East Coast. It's coming. But it's compassionate. Iceland, a few years ago, I'm sure some of you saw this, Iceland said in a statement, the president of Iceland proudly proclaimed that they had eradicated Down syndrome in Iceland. And I thought, how can that be? How did they do that? So I looked into it. They have not eradicated Down syndrome. Women are still getting pregnant with babies that are diagnosed with Down syndrome. All they have done is they simply, once a woman is diagnosed with Down syndrome, they basically convince and manipulate and coerce her to kill that baby in the womb once it's diagnosed. They have not eradicated Down syndrome. They have simply killed every single child that's been diagnosed with Down syndrome in the womb. It's compassionate murder. That is the kind of society that we're living in today. There's so much I can say about this misguided compassion. We're seeing it spread, not just in the abortion issue, not just in the euthanasia, not just in that, but we're also seeing it seep in through the LGBT. Let me tell you something, guys. The pro-life movement, the pro-abortion movement and the LGBT movement, they are married. Both of those movements, they're married. They're enmeshed. Because people say, "What, Abby? Why do you talk so much?" Because if you follow me on Facebook or Instagram or anything, I talk about this trans thing. I talk about the LGBT movement probably just as much as I talk about abortion. You say, "Abby, why do you talk about that so much? Your gig is abortion. Why are you talking so much about the LGBT?" Because they go hand in hand. Both movements are profoundly anti-God. Both movements are profoundly anti-life. About 30%, 25 to 30% of the people that I worked with at Planned Parenthood were part of the LGBT movement. There is something really pathetic, something really ironic, something really sad about a person whose sexual act is non-procreative by nature telling a woman who is pregnant that she should destroy the life inside of her. But that's happening every day inside of the abortion industry. Both of these movements are symptoms of the same root. You see, the ugly root here is not abortion. The ugly root here is not the LGBT agenda. They're symptoms of the same root, and that root is the destruction of the image of God. They both spring from that same root. The destruction of the family, the destruction of the image of God. That's really what this is about. You want to be countercultural? Get married to someone of the opposite sex. And have lots of babies. And do it young. All this waiting until you're 30, 35 years old. Oh, we gotta finish school before we get married. Stop that. Get married, have babies. Do it early. Have lots of them. And look, eventually, I keep telling people, I go and speak, I keep telling them, I'm like, listen, we don't have to worry about the liberals for that much longer. They are literally aborting themselves out of existence. We are procreating. They are not. We are not going to have to worry about the LGBT agenda that much longer. They can't procreate. We can. Listen. There are so many things that we need to address. There's so many things that we need to talk about. There's so many things that are pressing us, in this time in our society. Of course, I was very vocal about my stance against the vaccine. The vaccine and abortion, related. Abortion, LGBT movement, related. Abortion and our economy, related. We probably wouldn't be in this desperate economical time if we hadn't aborted 63 million taxpayers. I can couple just about every problem we're having in our society right now with the fact that we devalue life in this country. We have a problem with dehumanization in our society. You want to stop the nonsense in our society? We have to start valuing human life. So my final appeal to you is to be bold about this issue. Be offensive. Don't worry who you offend. Be bold inside of your church. Be bold on social media. I know you all have social media. My parents have social media, so I know you do too. Be bold on social media. My prayer every day when I wake up is, Lord, let this be the day that your people are more offended are more concerned about offending your heart than they are about offending their neighbor. Be concerned about offending the heart of God. Don't worry about your neighbor. God bless you.